we'll just start off with very brief introductions of ourselves, so some of us you know anyway, and then just hop into to the interview. We can do an alphabetical order. Father Billy, would you begin?
I'm Billy Alford, and I'm the rector at St. Albans, Augusta, and the priest in charge of Church of the Atonement, and the dean of the Augusta Convocation. I've known Gladys for a long, long time, so if I left anything out, Gladys, please fill it in. So.
Hi there, everyone, and hi, Gladys, and welcome. Hey. Of course, I know Gladys as well, Douala Nobles, Good Shepherd, Episcopal, independent community in Brunswick.
Yeah, my name is John Hayes. I am I'm co-chair of this group along with Karen. I'm a history professor here in Augusta at Augusta University. I'm a Georgia native, and I go to St. Augustine's Episcopal Church. And just this work, this group is, you're seeing many of the members of the Racial Justice and Healing group in the diocese. And a key thing we're doing is these oral histories with parishioners of historically Black churches in the diocese. And we're excited about that.
Yeah, forgot I had muted myself. I'm June Johnson. I'm currently the vicar at All Saints Episcopal Church on Tybee Island, but I believe we met when I was the vicar at Holy Nativity in St. Simon's. I am also a Georgia native, Albany, in fact, and am part of this team with great pleasure and joy. I really look forward to hearing what you have to say to us today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I also met you at the CDI training.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
right.
Okay.
So, Ms. Lyde, my name is Karen Cody, and I live in Springfield, Georgia, and go to St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Rincon. I am a native Georgian, but not a cradle Episcopalian. So, so I've been learning all kinds of new things about the traditions of this church, and racial equity, reconciliation has always been very close to my heart. So I'm very glad to be a part of this ministry team, and I'm so looking forward to hearing your story.
Okay, yeah. Good to meet all of you.
My turn?
Yep.
That's everybody.
Zibby.
I'm Zibby Davidson, and I'm from St. John and St. Mark in Albany. And Ms. Lyde, you and I served briefly together on diocesan council, and that's the first time that I met you.
Yeah.
I hadn't realized that I had already met you before I saw your face, and that's pretty exciting to me. My mom was very active in this sort of work back in the 50s and 60s. And when we became so aware that that only started the work that needed to be done and it needed to be carried on, I let Father Alford and our bishop know that I was interested in joining the work of this ministry group. And I'm excited to be here and cannot wait to hear what you have to share with us.
Cool. So we'll hop right into it. We have specific questions to ask you, and that's what different committee members will ask. But before we get into those, could you just tell us a little bit about sort of growing up and the direction your life has taken?
I am a cradle Episcopalian, and I was born and raised at St. Athanasius. We literally lived across the street from the church. My father was director there for over 25 years. He was also Douala's priest too, all those years. Of course, when we were growing up, everything was completely segregated. But the communities were so self-contained that you really didn't realize that you were segregated. or there were even white people in Brunswick, because we didn't come in contact with anyone growing up. Is that weird? But we went to a black church, we went to a black library, we went to a black school, a black grocery stores. So, like we didn't have any kind of interaction. Father Morgan, who was the priest then during my growing up years at St. Mark's Church, used to walk from his house on Gloucester Street to St. Mark's, and he would always pass by our house and chit chat for, a hot minute with my dad. And so he was the only person that I really knew growing up. I would see Bishop Stewart, of course, who would come in from time to time, but he and Daddy were good friends. But, we grew up at a Black conference center. We had our conferences in Voorhees, and the priests had their conferences at St. Augustine's in North Carolina, in Raleigh. So, like I said, there was nothing, we didn't feel anything except when we saw Bishop Stewart once a year, you know. But it wasn't like we felt that we were deprived of anything, because we were really involved. The church was really involved in the community. We had social activities in every week to bring people into our church. So it was always a lot of ongoing activity there. What else I need to say about that? But like I said, I know we were segregated, but I don't think we really felt that. Like even when we went to camp in the summer, we had a church bus, and the bus would pile all 50 of us on the bus and take us to Voorhees, and we would have a ball. And that's what I was trying to explain when we were doing the Diocesan Council. We have no ties to Honey Creek, because we didn't grow up with Honey Creek, or what was the other, St. Michael's?
Camp Reese.
Camp Reese. We didn't do any of that. So we don't have any connection with any of that, because that wasn't a part of us. Okay. What else, Billy?
Can I ask Gladys a question?
Sure.
You mentioned Bishop Stewart coming to visit once a year. Did he give you a Nicodemus visit, or was it a regular visit?
I really think it was a regular visit.
Okay.
Yes. Bishop Stewart was kind of close to our hearts. Like Daddy had a heart attack right before I was going to go to school, right after I finished high school. And well, we weren't getting financial assistance from the diocese. No Black students were. And I remember him saying, Gladys, just do a letter and let me know how things are going, and I'll help you all I can. And he helped for the entire while I was in school. All I did was write a little note saying I need some help, and he would come through. Because of course, Daddy died before I finished college. So the bishop was there. He was there, even though the church and all was segregated. He was there for us. There was several in our parish that he assisted.
The reason I asked the question is because when I became an Episcopalian bishop, Reeves was the bishop.
Mm-hmm.
And we never got a regular visit. It was called a Nicodemus visit.
Yeah, I know.
So our services were 11, but the bishop would not come to St. John's until either 4 o'clock or in the evening when he was visiting St. Paul's, Albany. Mm-hmm. Until the priest just said, no, we're not going to come back. If you can't come to us at 11, we're not coming back at 4 or 7 in the evening. Mm-hmm. And he called it a Nicodemus visit. You would not slip into South Albany at night and slip out. You would come, we have church, and I just wonder, was that the custom of all of the black churches around the diocese? But it seems that your father being a priest, that was a different relationship with he and Bishop Stewart.
But I think Bishop Stewart was a different person. You know, things didn't become integrated until Bishop Stewart insisted, and he made the move to integrate the church and the convention even, because they were integrated the year my daddy had a heart attack and could not attend the convention. That was the year that they first allowed the black churches to come to the conference.
Yeah.
So, but we had, no, he gave us a visit. You know, he was warm. You know, we felt, do you remember Dwala? You don't remember his visits, do you?
Well,
But I
you
think
know,
he was gone, but I keep forgetting there's an age difference.
you're right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but Bishop Stewart would come and sit in the parish hall and eat. You know, he was a real warm person. He was the only one at that time. But you know, he was a real political person and a strong civil rights worker.
So Gladys, tell us this. How did St. Athanasius, you know, your entire life, of course, how did St. A shape you when you were growing up? And what has it meant to you as an adult?
You know, we have such fond memories of St. Athanasius. And all the kids, well, we live it's in the south end of town. So all the kids from the south end, and all of us went to high school together, and they would all come together at St. Athanasius every weekend for activities. And, you know, because we had so much going on and so many activities, that it had a serious impact on us. We did pageants and all of that. So all of that went into making us stronger individuals, you know, more self-reliant and, you know, self-confident. And that was a part of our strong Sunday school and teachers and all the community people. We had a strong community group there. So all of that went into making us who we were and to encourage us to go ahead on and do other things. Our church was really, really involved. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I have a question, and you've already, I think, basically answered the question, but so I'll tweak it a bit. And I mean, the original question was just sort of what kind of presence did St. Athanasius have in the local community? But maybe, and you've certainly touched on that. I think I'll tweak it and just ask, you know, did it have a presence sort of relative to its numbers of parishioners, or perhaps maybe a larger presence? I mean, yeah, larger presence than just sort of the numbers of people directly involved in it.
Because I don't think there was a church in Brunswick as involved as St. Athanasius, not a black church. People came to us from other denominations and, you know, became members. Because we had so much going on and our outreach was so good. We had a kindergarten that, you know, I'm sure they paid a quarter a week to go to kindergarten, and they did that in the parish hall. And that was another thing that brought the kids in. And then they had a playground in the backyard of the parish hall also. And the community kids were allowed to come anytime they wanted to, just to play in the yard. And Daddy was always, but you have to understand, when I say Daddy, he's the only priest that I grew up with, okay? He was the only one I knew. So, and he was such an awesome person. And he just attracted people. People just came in because they could sit and talk with him. And he had so much going on. And he wanted to help all the people, you know. that the area we were in was a very, very low income area. Well, we didn't have anything else at the time, not in town. So everybody just came to St. Athanasius. We attracted, and you had, let me tell you, we were laughing because you had to get there early to get a good back seat. You know, if you got there late, you'd have to sit in front of the
Right.
church. So we used to laugh about that all the time. And it was always crowded because we had such a good priest and we had such a good program going on that we just attracted so many people who wanted to be involved. Also, they were involved in a group called, back that time was called a biracial human relations group. And they used to meet, there were several community people that met with both of my parents were on there, and then there were other people from the community on it. And they all worked as far as for integration and all. But they put their whole souls into the community. Okay.
Yes.
So
You-
quickly before June asks her question, and I might have missed this already, but what was the time period? If you don't mind sharing that with us, and then what was your dad's name?
Listen, my dad was Thaddeus P. Martin Jr.
Okay.
And the time, you know, I was born there, and that was in 1950. He came down in 47. He came to Brunswick in 47. So that was like, well, we lived right across from Glen Academy, and we walked 14 blocks up to Risley High School because we couldn't go to the school across the street.
Glen
But
Academy, Glen Academy.
Yeah.
yeah, we lived right across from Glen Academy. But Brunswick, Risley was 14 blocks away at the other end of Albany Street. And see, everything was right there together on Albany, and Albany was a hub back then, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Is the worship at St. Athanasius now similar to when you were growing up? How is it similar? How has it changed in that period of time?
Well, you know, when we grew up, you didn't have female lay people. You only had men, the lay readers, doing all of that. No female acolytes or crucifix or anything. So we were talking about how the other day, in fact, how things have become much more lax than they were. You know, we grew up in a stiff time. You know, there was, you did stuff this way and not that way, and you had to fall in line with everything. And even so far as like, this is my pew, you cannot sit in my pew, you know, and all of that. And we were saying that we have really let ourselves go and finally become more relaxed and welcoming people. Because I think during my young adult life, we were very stiff and not as welcoming as we should have been, because we were so structured, you know, and this is the way you do it. And you just can't come in St. Athanasius and do it your way. But I think through the years, even though we're still a segregated congregation and we do have one or two or three white members, it's still a Black church, of course. And I imagine it, and it's so sad that the church is the most segregated institution there is, and the church should be the less segregated and more accepting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
With the gender segregation, Gladys, your sister still grew up and became a priest.
But you see how late she became a priest.
Yeah, that's true. We were in seminary
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
So when during her day, they definitely were not having female priests. I don't. Did they even have any white female priests back then? I don't remember anybody.
Not
But
in this,
then
not in this
I wasn't
diocese.
out. Yeah. Then I wasn't out and about. I moved. I was gone for a while, and I moved back to Brunswick in '85. I left in '72. 68. I left in '68 when I finished high school. And then after college and all, I came back for a short stint to help my mama out. Then we left again. Um, but coming back, you know, I don't know what happened coming back, but we had Father Clark in the early 1990s,
90s.
right?
Hmm.
And he did an outstanding job too of bringing people in and making us feel warm and, meeting our needs. He was really a warm person, and he is really a warm person. I sure didn't mean that. Um, but we were heavy into the music, our Negro spirituals, and he brought that out. Father Clark did. And we had an excellent music program. And I think Father Clark was involved in the community also.
So, talking about the community, and you did mention this a little bit earlier. You've talked a little bit about it already. But beside the church life in Brunswick, what was life growing up for you? I mean, it all revolved around the church so far. You've said, right?
Yes, there's always a church in school.
Church and school. Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh. You know, we didn't have activities growing up. Uh, there were no dance studios and all of that growing up. Everybody took piano lessons, and I think we all went out to Selden every summer and spent the entire day every day. Um, and that was the extent of our social life. And every summer, of course, during high school, we went to camp, and we looked forward to that. So, and people from other churches would come to ask to go to camp with us because we always shared with them what a good time we had and how much fun it was.
So
Uh,
that was church camp,
yes,
Episcopal church camp.
uh,
Okay.
in
Wow.
Voorhees in Denmark, South Carolina.
Okay.
Voorhees College, which was Episcopal church. I mean college. Hmm. Yeah.
So how about your siblings? How many siblings did you have? Do you have
There
growing
were
up?
5 of us.
Okay.
My sister's died. She died about 5 years ago, and she was a priest. Um, I think her last church was St. Anselm's in Nashville,
Okay.
and it was the college chapel. And it was so ironic because that's where I attended chapel when I was in school, and she would go there as a priest. And I remember going there for her service, her installation, and how warm that was having her. But they were not accepting of female priests. The black, I don't know if it was true in white churches or not, but the black churches were not very welcoming of female priests. And that wasn't just Anna, that was across the board. Um, but she was there for she was in Chicago and she had a rough time with the congregation there. And she had a rough time in Tennessee being accepted. And I didn't understand it because they called her. How do you call somebody and then mistreat them, you know? I thought that was.
Wow. So she really was a trailblazer then, wasn't she?
She was.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
was.
Just real quick, Miss Lyde, did you go to Fisk?
Yeah, I sure did.
Yeah.
The blue and the gold. Her sons are steadfast. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Ms. Lyde, the next question is a little more serious. And I'll read it to you because I don't know how to reword it. It says, many scholars echo Dr. King's statement that Black churches fostered a sense of somebodyness that the dominant racist culture wanted to deny. And do you think this description applies to St. Athanasius? Have you ever had a sense, I guess, that the dominant culture in Brunswick would be just as happy there was no St. Athanasius? That may not be what the question is
but
asking.
I understand what you're saying, but the problem is, though, we came out of St. Mark's Church, and if they felt that way or that strongly against us organizing, you would think they wouldn't have organized us, you know. It was Mary Nightingale and several, Dora White and several others from St. Mark's that started the Sunday school and then eventually started the church there. I think now it's just a total disregard and disconnect. We aren't connected at all. Now I see Christ Church doing things in the community, but that is the only Episcopal church that I've seen out and involved in any kind of racial gatherings we have, or any kind of issues that we have. All the other churches are just, you know, like non-concerned, and they're just not concerned. They're not involved. They don't care. I don't know if they don't care. Maybe they have a couple inside the congregations that care, but as a whole, they don't preach it and they don't encourage it. You know, I see them at Christ Church encouraging, you know, because we also work the food bank at St. Athanasius with Christ Church. At one time, Holy Nativity was doing a little something with a group that we had from the college students, Dwala, and the girls from the college. And they seem to be concerned and caring, but the other churches, it's like we don't exist anyway. You know, like we have no involvement with each other. We don't interact at all with each other.
Okay, that I was about to ask you that. So you're saying that there's not like ever any like joint ministry between the members of St. Athanasius and any other Episcopal church?
No. I told you I see Christ Church at rallies and out there being seen and involved. But as far, you know what, I think the first time Tom has been here,
Purdy.
Purdy has been here for over 5 years. And he came down to the parish hall this fall. He said that was the first time he'd ever been in the church. And even though his assistants have had service with us after during the period when we didn't have anyone, he would one or two of the ladies would come and both of them would come, and Becky would. But he had never even stepped foot in St. Athanasius.
Well, now,
He's your dean now, isn't he?
Yes.
when I was there, Gladys, I was at Holy Nativity from 2013 through 2016. I left right at the first of 17.
Mhm.
Father Tom had started a cooperative activity with Christ Church, Holy Nativity, St. Athanasius, St. Mark's to do work in the community. And we did some Friday evening food for the kids and story time and books and other things. And
sure
Tom was
did.
always there for those meetings.
You sure
And-
did. I
Yeah.
remember.
And
That didn't go over well.
I'm just disappointed that a way to work together wasn't found, because I was truly hopeful that it would be.
Yeah, no. And
Mhm.
I don't know what happened with that program, but it just fizzled out and the kids stopped participating. But like I've seen Purdy even at the Unitarian church, when they have activities.
Mhm.
And I think I saw you. Uh
Yeah, I was active with
Yeah.
PFLAG when I was there, and we met at the Unitarian Church.
yeah,
So
right,
I was
right.
around a lot of their activities.
I know they have the ministerial, was like an alliance thing. What do they have? What do they call it? Where all the priests come together in
Well,
the convocation.
Clericus.
Clericus.
Clericus, yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But we had started a I think it was Glenn Ecumenical Ministries or some such thing
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Tom that we were trying to include the Episcopal churches and then get other churches that were in the neighborhood to help us,
Uh-huh.
to help to be there to support Saint A. And I'm just real sorry that did not continue.
And one time we had a connection, a relationship with the Lutheran Church during my young years.
Okay. Does Saint A still serve at Manna House?
No,
No. Okay.
I don't think we served at Manor House. We do the food bank,
Okay.
and
Well,
that's
Holy
in conjunction
Nativity,
with Christ Church.
yeah, Holy Nativity regularly did Manna House.
Yeah, I think they still do that.
Yeah.
Now they doing just the lunch bags, so they don't come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but no, you know what? We were never approached and we never offered. So I don't know about the Manor House.
Okay.
I never heard anyone mention it. But our problem was we were without a priest for a while, for a long time.
Yeah.
And they were just coming in and going out. So where we should have been more involved, we weren't, because we didn't have the leadership that we do now.
That does make a difference.
It makes a heck of a lot of difference. Yeah, it really does. So I feel now with the new priests on board that we will become, have more outreach and do more in the community, more visibility out there. And when we can have service in person again. Uh-huh.
Yes.
So Gladys, the next question concerns representation at the diocesan level. So in terms of St. Athanasius and its involvement at the diocesan level, what did it look like early on, as far back as you can remember? What does it look like today?
I don't even remember representation in the early days.
When did you start going to conventions? When did you start going? Or someone from St. Athanasius?
They started, it was always the little group, Buck and Lois and that group, they kept things going. So they were going, I think we started, we must have started about just about 20 years ago. It hadn't been that long. But you still feel like that you're an outsider coming in, like you still don't feel like you're in on what's going on inside. Even at diocesan council meetings, I feel like decisions have been made before we even get there, and they just push things through. I don't feel like that they brought us in on what's going on, really, and when everything is presented, it's just presented, and we just there, you know. Um, and I know back in the day when Father Clark was there, he used to have a workshop, a little session to prepare the delegates for the convention, so that they would at least be abreast of what's going on, inside the church. And we haven't done that. Like I said, we haven't had a priest. So we've been out of the loop as far as that goes. But I still feel like that at the convention, that we're just there. We're not a part of any of the major committees. We're not in on the budget. I mean, now we have a representative, but we weren't involved in any of that. So, like, we're just there, you know? And that's such an empty feeling to be a member of a church all your life and still feel like an outsider. That's
You,
a
you're saying
terrible feeling.
that's still the feeling?
Yeah, it's still a feeling.
You think
And
even
in
today that is the
observing the
feeling?
other Black delegates, and there's so few of us that you know them all. You know everyone, and it's usually the same ones from each congregation. They're out of the loop too. Like we're just not being included in any of the planning, or you know.
But you were included though, Gladys,
Uh,
you were included on the selection team though for us to get a bishop though, right?
yeah, I was involved in that.
Yeah, you participated in that process. I remember
And,
you being there.
and Buck has served on standing committee for a number of terms.
Yeah, I know Buckhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Buck. And he was always on there, some diocesan convention at the conventions.
And I mention that because that was an elected position by convention to the standing committee. He was elected. Although if you go back and look at the year that St. John Savannah, when St. John Savannah left the diocese briefly, that was a year that Blacks were allowed to go to diocesan convention. They objected.
Mm-hmm.
And Bishop Stewart let them come back into the diocese without consequences. But it was like late 60s, 60 something.
Yeah, it was like late 60s,
Yeah.
like 67, 68.
Right.
Uh-huh. Right. Uh-huh. Billy, you and I were there were 3 Blacks on the search committee, right?
Mm-hmm. The other young man was from Savannah. What's his name? I can't think of it. St. Paul, Savannah.
Yeah, right.
Sorry about that. I can't reach you to turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to pause for just a second and welcome Layla with it to our meeting this afternoon.
Hi,
Layla,
sorry,
Miss-
late.
That's okay. We're glad you joined us. So we are, as you can tell, having an interview with Miss Gladys Lyde. She's from St. Athanasius in Brunswick. So if you want to just briefly introduce yourself, that would be great.
My name is Dr. Lewis, Leela's first name, and I'm at St. Paul's in Jessup, Georgia. I've been a member here since I've moved here, and that's been about 8, 9 years now.
Where you from?
I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, by way of Sparta, Georgia, near Milledgeville.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'm from.
Uh,
I just want to say I understand fully well what you're saying about not being inclusive in certain things. I'm sure you understand systemic racism far better than a lot of people. It's disheartening to see that in a church.
It is.
In a church where you worship a creator who is all loving, who has none of those qualities that have been projected onto you.
Mhm.
It is disheartening, and my heart aches when just to hear you speak of it. When we as Episcopalians in what our mission is, you would think we would be so far advanced than any other church when it comes to including all.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me. I know I had a conversation just last week with a member of St. Mark's and she was saying that they have in-person services. And I said, and she was trying to encourage me to attend church with them. I said, I went there last Lenten season and the Lenten season before that. And it was the coldest situation I had been in a while. I mean, they speak and they say, hello, glad to have you. But, you didn't feel any of the warmth or anything. I said, I enjoyed the message after the service, and he was exceptional. The speaker was, but the whole atmosphere was like, and I understand that people have their little groups, but you should always be aware of and reach out to visitors, at any of your churches. And this was an Episcopal church that I attended. And I said, well, you don't have to worry about me coming back. I don't think I'll be visited again, And I really felt bad about having to say that, but I did want them to know how they made us feel, and all of us were at a table together and everybody was walking around us and, not speaking. And, it was an uncomfortable situation. And, but we enjoyed the speaker, which was a good thing, but we shouldn't be feeling like that. I think people, what should I say? They should be more loving. Is that the term that we're supposed to be using now? You're supposed to be bringing people in and making folks feel comfortable and welcome. And we have so many churches that don't do that, so many congregations.
I'm curious, Ms. Lyde, going back to St. Athanasius,
Yes.
just from your earliest memories growing up there to the present, what had been kind of the ebbs and flows of the parish flourishing and perhaps times of not flourishing?
Growing up, the church was flourishing. We went from mission status to parish, and when did we lost our parish status? I don't think we became a mission anymore until until after we became a parish, you know, like we had problems during the depression, and then everything picked back up again and the congregations picked up again. But now I've lost my thought. What was the question?
Just sort of the seasons of flourishing and not flourishing in the parish
Okay,
most of the time you've known it.
but you know, our problem has always been in leadership. When we have a priest and he's there out and about, we do extremely well, and everybody feels it, you know. But in the last 5 years, we've been in and out. Okay, and we have such a shortage of Black priests in not just our diocese, across the country. So it's been kind of difficult trying to get a priest. So I think we on the right road now. We have a young man from Savannah, Georgia, initially from St. Matthew's, and who is doing an outstanding job reaching out to the people and making everybody feel like we're home now. And we're going to see big things going on. We're praying that we see big things going on in St. Athanasius from now on, unless somebody takes him away from us. We feel good. And we pick up people coming in to drop in to visit. We have more visitors. We even have more visitors online now too than we did. With the Zoom call attendance has really improved and increased, and we have a good service. So I think all in all, we on the right road to improving and to growing. Okay.
I have a question that sort of flows from that. Do you have children in your congregation?
No. And
Or
that's
is
the
your
big-
congregation?
It's old.
I was asking,
No, we have,
not like ours. Yeah.
yeah, they were saying that that's really a problem now. And what was that?
Gladys, you do have a few kids now,
Well, we got my 2 grands.
but then you have a couple of high school age kids too, don't you?
Not now, they've gone.
They've all graduated?
Yes,
Wow.
they've all gone. I remember when we used to have like 9 or 10 acolytes. They were all fighting for robes and all, and what to serve. And now we don't, like we usually have the 4th and 5th Sunday for youth readers. And we don't have any youth readers.
There were young people there the last time I was there.
Yeah, that was
Anniversary about 2 years ago.
2 years ago. And those have graduated.
Okay.
So we don't have any teenagers. We only have Jordan and JoJo,
Her grandchildren.
my grands. JoJo, who's 8, was a reader the last time. Yeah, so that's another thing, we weren't doing anything to attract any young couples. We have maybe 2 that join us online that we're hoping once we get going again, they'll come in to the congregation and join us. But we didn't have anything at that time to offer young people. We weren't doing anything. And I can understand that. If my roots weren't so deep, I would, but they are too deep for me to go. Yeah. Okay. Is that?
I think you're muted, Jen. Sorry.
Yeah, I keep forgetting I do that. I'm afraid my cats will come in and raise heck. We know that St. Ath had a lot of activity in the civil rights movement.
Right.
What was that like? And was the whole parish involved? Was it just individuals? How is that history played out? And I also want to know where that gorgeous civil rights window, I want to know the kind of the story behind it.
Okay. Because that was when Father Wright was at Holy Nativity.
Yes.
And he was a strong, visible person in the community. Always. In fact, they recognized him right before he died at the Martin Luther King rally at our march.
I think when he retired from Nativity, didn't he become
he was our priest
a priest at St. Athanasius?
He sure was. In fact, he was buried from St. Athanasius. And he donated 3 windows before he died. He did one for Martin Luther King. Those some gorgeous windows too. He did one of Martin, and he did one of Father Martin, the priest that got killed during the movement. You know the story, the one that was in the restaurant and they came in.
I don't think I do.
He was an Episcopal priest. I'll have to get with you on the story, but he was killed during those civil rights days. And then he has the large window that's dedicated to all the civil rights people who lost their lives during the march. And during the dedication of those windows, he invited all the family members of those slain workers to the service. And that was one moving, beautiful service. And as they told the bell, the parents or the family members stood up. And, Father Wright was just such an unusual person. He dedicated so much of his life to race relations and trying to make things better.
Yes, he did.
And we really enjoyed his time with us. He was really
is that still known and still a passion or a thing that's still active in the parish? Is that still an interest in the parish?
What is?
The civil rights movement. Does the current parish know that history, or is it being carried forward?
Yes, it's being carried forward, and we still participate in the programs. And now we're not, because like I said, because we don't have a priest, we haven't had any top leadership involved in, and really there's not that much going on in Brunswick that we have been involved in.
Okay.
We've been involved with the Ahmaud Arbery's situation and that, and we have been involved as a church because the ministerial, that's not the Ministerial Alliance, but the Episcopal Ministers Ministerial Alliance was involved in the march and all in that.
Okay.
We're still trying to do what we can and how we can.
Okay. Well, I have to tell you, the first time I walked into your church, that big window absolutely knocked me off my feet. I had to sit down. It just,
I know.
It's remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
But Gladys, wouldn't you say that St. Athanasius is still a safe place for staging. I remember when I was there, there was an event that was taking place down at Kingsland at the Trident base, submarine base there or something.
And they were staying at the church.
Yeah, they were. That was some of the members there, along with your husband.
Share plowers.
Yes.
Yeah, the share plowers were they used the church, and we, we offered to work with them, and we did participate with them.
Right.
And in fact, they had all their meetings and sleep. I think a lot of them slept down at the church and in the yard. But I think we're not, because we don't know. I think if we were more aware, and the girl who was in charge of that, she was attending church at St. Athanasius, and she was working with the food bank and brought it to our attention. And we said, sure, like we always offer the parish hall that stays locked up 7 days a week, it's always open. I think we now have an AA meeting there and group that meets there every week. But we've always tried to open up to the public, not just for racial programs, but for any kind of community need and gathering. Yeah.
So that's awesome. So thinking about the civil rights era, now like 50 years ago, compared to today, how would you compare things today? Do you think that we've moved forward? Are you encouraged or discouraged, or how do you feel about that now?
You know what? And I keep saying this, and they keep telling me to stop it. But I think integration was the worst thing that happened to the Black community. It was. I mean, like we were so close knit and together. Like I said, we had our Black grocery stores, our Black restaurants, our library, our schools. We didn't have to go downtown because we didn't buy clothes. We ordered from the from the catalogs. So we didn't ever venture downtown even. So basically, I think things go on in Brunswick that we really just not aware of, but there are things going on, all racial problems, always. And I think they always will be. I really personally don't think things gonna get any better. We'll always be black and white, and I don't know. It's just that you don't feel like white people are, and I mean this generally, are as accepting of us as you would think we would be after going through all these years together, and having brought us over here. It's just that you don't see much hope. But there are a few people who are still fighting the battle. And we pray.
May I ask Gladys a question with regards to that? And I know that Father Martin has been gone a long time, but do you think, Gladys, knowing your dad the way you knew him better than any of us, do you think he would share that same sentiment, or you think he would be more hopeful if he were here today?
I don't know. Even though he grew up in a time and a place where he was pretty much accepted, and he still was Black educated, so he felt a strong responsibility to his Black people. It's kind of hard to say, Dwala, whether or not he would feel like things were better. Because there's just so many underhanded things going on. And then things were going on back then that we didn't know about. You know, you weren't even where you were in your own little world, and you didn't know what was going on outside. Because I always remember all the good things, you know, and that's just the way my world was, you know, and the family's world. We didn't see all the lynchings and all that and the things going on and the police brutality. And I know it was going on because we were so, I don't know, separated from that. And that's kind of bad too. That's that we weren't aware. We weren't exposed to that like we should have been. We should have known about all those things going on. And we didn't.
Miss Lyde, how do you think your children and your grandchildren feel about their prospects, their education? Do they feel hopeful, or do you know how, you know, they're a different generation, and this time is different from the time you grew up. I just wonder how your children and your grandchildren are they, and are they involved in the Episcopal Church?
Yes, I only have one child, and she's very involved.
Okay.
But you know, like, even though things are integrated, they still segregated. They go to a school where they don't mingle with any white kids. You know, their friends are all the Black kids from their mama's friends or their daddy's friends, you know. Now, my grandchildren would become more involved and more outgoing than I think than I would have been. But their mama, my daughter, is involved in the community. So she has to be hopeful, you know, and she's an entrepreneur. So she has to be out there praying and working hard that things gonna be better. You know, they got to wish that, but I'm 70 odd, and it's kind of hard for me to see it, you know. But I think they gotta be a little hopeful at least, that things gonna be better. I feel.
So Gladys, at this point, we're kind of winding up now.
Yes.
With everything, you know, we've discussed today, I think one of the ultimate questions for us at this point is, based on your experiences, what does the Episcopal Church at large, the Diocese of Georgia, what do they need to know from Black members of the Episcopal Church?
Well, I think we've lost so many Black Episcopalians since we're not growing. And our churches are really dying, and we're not bringing any young people in. So what should our thing be? We've got to somehow get into raising and growing young priests to bring them into our churches. And I don't even know how you go about doing that if you don't have any young people in your church. But for us to grow and to keep existing, we've got to have Black leadership. And I think it's gonna be Black leadership, because all these years, we'll always be a Black Episcopal church and a white Episcopal church. You might have a couple of integrated congregations, but for the most part, they'll be predominantly one or the other. And I just think that to bring them in, we're gonna have to reach out there to bring them in. And I don't have an answer for that. I know there's such a serious shortage that you're almost afraid that the Black church is gonna die. And I know at one time they were saying that they weren't gonna support any mission churches in the diocese. So if you became a mission, that you would just have to go in and incorporate with another church. And I think a lot of churches have done that, you know, all around. So I don't even know what the answer to that would be. What do you think?
Can I offer something?
Yes, Billy.
I think it has to start, Gladys, with discernment levels.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, we go back to Buck, for example, in times that I've known St. A's, Buck has always been involved, and Buck was on the standing committee when I came through. But I think we got to find those dedicated folk in the Episcopal Church, particularly Black Episcopalians, to get them involved at that level. Because the stories so often that Black people tell in this sermon are not the same stories that they hear the whites who go through the process. For example, I think on the front end of ordination process, a lot is left on to discernment committees and your psychological exams. So if you go in and you've had intimate conversation with Jesus, they may think you're a little crazy. But if another Black person is on those committees and say, I understand what you're talking about, you know, I've had to cry at night and talk to Jesus too. You're not crazy. You know, I served for 5 terms on the standing committee, and I can tell you the number of times I've had people who come to me and say, thank you for being there. I really believe that you understood where I'm coming from. Whereas sometimes people are afraid to share their stories because they're trying to say the right things to get through the process. That's to true. Be accepted.
Yeah, right.
Where if you have people at your parish, vestry levels, discernment process to say, you're not crazy. Or to identify that 12-year-old and say, you know, have you thought about the priesthood? You know, take these classes when you get to college, etc. Because it has always been done, but nobody's helping our kids to follow that path.
Even that way, right.
So I think it has to go even further back to find people who, and I say this for myself because I vowed that my time and service in these positions is over. But I think we need to get people at those levels to identify young boys and girls and say, the church needs you. You know, that's why I wear collars everywhere I go here in Augusta. You know, I think the Black kids at the sea and let me tell them I'm in the Episcopal Church and say, well, what is that? You know, but there are some of us who have survived the process, and so many of them don't see that. And since I'm talking, and I ask Gladys one other question, please. This has to do with classism. I don't know. It sounds like what you said today, you didn't experience that, and probably St. Athanasius did not. But what I found so often is that in predominantly Black congregations, they can be almost worse than being in all white congregations. Due to classism. Yes, if you're not a member of the club, you don't belong here, and nobody reaches out to you. So we may be missing a lot of opportunities that people go back to the Black church because they just don't see a way. And they don't see that way because we're too busy being Episcopalians to pay attention to these young Black boys and girls coming up. So for whatever that's worth, I don't know if you experienced classism at St. A's or not.
You know, I mean, we all know that that's the story of the Black Episcopalian, you know. But, you know, when you were getting back to Buck and them and those guys, what happened was that they didn't know how to pass the torch. When they were there, they kept all of us out, so we weren't in the know, and we couldn't bring other people in because everything had to go through them. And that was a bad thing in the Episcopal Church, and in our church in particular. You know, we had a ruling group, and they determined everything in the church, you know, and you had to go through them. And not until they were out of it, or, you know, did we come in. And by the time we came in, you know, things were too far gone. You know, like, it didn't make us feel a part of things, because it was either their way, you know, or no way. And I think most of the Black churches were like that. They had a ruling, you know, set of people that controlled. And that's just not the Episcopal Church. I think that's the church in general.
I was going to say that's not limited to Black congregations.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And that's the thing of not being able to pass it and train somebody to come up to do. You know, they just held on for as long as they could, and until they just couldn't anymore. And then by the time you had to take over, you were lost, and you didn't know what was going on, you know? And that's a serious problem in our church, not bringing people in and get them involved, you know? And that's a thing we're gonna have to really be careful about as we grow and we go ahead on, as we begin again, to get more people involved in what's going on in our church. Okay.
So, Mrs. Lyde, you've given us a lot to reflect on today, and we really appreciate your time and just openness with us. Just want to ask in closing, this is a very open-ended question. Are there things that we haven't touched on that you feel important to share?
Like I said earlier, and we've touched on them, that we just need to feel like we are part of things. That you all like are making the decisions and just telling us what has been decided, you know. And that's a grave mistake to not include us in any of that. Hopefully, and that's just not in the diocesan council or any of that's in everything. Like when you even, and I know this is off track, but when you go to the office, all the employees are white. And that doesn't represent our church, you know, and that's a serious issue, you know. I don't know. It makes you feel uncomfortable. You know, this is my church, and then this office doesn't represent us at all. Okay. And even in the things that the bishop does, not just the bishop, but the church itself does, it's not inclusive. And that's one thing we have to be cognizant of and remember to include everybody. We want to be a part. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for asking me. I enjoyed chatting with you guys.
We enjoyed.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You know, I love traveling down memory lane. Y'all take care.